The state of Jharkhand, eastern India, home to a population of almost 33 million people, 28% of which are recognized as tribal groups and 12% as scheduled castes. There are significant gaps between the rural and urban populations, and poverty is very much linked with ownership of land. Almost 30% of Jharkhand's geographical area is forests, and majority of communities build their livelihoods around the natural forest resources. These include wood for timber and non-wood products such as oilseeds, fruits and vegetables, spices, alcoholic drinks, cigarette wrappers, and medicinal plants. For decades, India faced the issue of deforestation, with the rapid declining of state-owned and managed forests. In response to this, the government saw the need to involve local communities in forest management. So, with the change of the National Forest Policy of 1988, the Joint Forest Management Program, or the JFM, was introduced throughout India, including Jharkhand. Under JFM, the forests are managed by village forest committees, or VFCs, comprising of community members. The informed scientific support in project formulation and the long-term vision of the project indicates a rational planning approach of the government. This video will focus on the JFM project implemented in Ranchi district of Jharkhand. Here's a quick overview of the JFM project. Objectives. The broad objective of JFM is to regenerate forests and reduce rural poverty. Sustainable resource management goes hand in hand with poverty alleviation. This links with UN Millennium Development Goal, or MGD1, eradicating extreme poverty and hunger. It also contributes to MDG 7 of ensuring environmental sustainability, and particularly Target 7A, integrating sustainable development into country programs and reversing the loss of environmental resources. Goals. The goals under the broader objective include reduction of forest degradation through sustainable resource management, while simultaneously enabling poverty alleviation through equitable distribution of forest benefits. Further goals include increasing economic opportunities for the rural poor, as well as increasing community engagement in forest management. Indicators. The indicators to measure deforestation include impact indicators such as tree yield at the start and end of each decade, performance and achievement indicators annually measured number of trees left after extraction, and number silviculturally available for harvest. Mainly economic indicators were used to measure poverty reduction, such as household income and consumption and sale of forest produce. Variables such as levels of extraction and forest product collection were considered. Data from JFM forests were compared with non-JFM forests, which served the purpose of a control group. All indicators were quantitative and mostly neglected the qualitative impact measurement of poverty reduction. Stakeholders. The main stakeholders of this project are the Village Forest Committee, or VFC, the local government represented by the Jharkhand Forest Department, the central government, donors and funding agencies, and the village community. This group needs to be further distinguished. The Munda and Oran are large land-owning tribal communities. The Mali and Lura own little or no land and belong to low castes. This stakeholder analysis will focus particularly on the community, as the level of marginalization is strongly linked with land ownership and has significant impact on outcomes. Power relations meant that elite village members dominate forest management mechanisms, and there is high inequality in access to forest resources based on caste or tribe. The social value attached to land reinforces the balance of power in favor of larger landowners, while the poorer village community are disproportionately dependent on non-wood forest products. Over 80% of forests comprise of timber wood. This shows the extent of power dominance. These are the different roles of each stakeholder and their interrelationship. Approaches. The JFM is part of the government's efforts towards decentralized participation. It was intended as a participatory, bottom-up approach to forest management, as the VFCs manage the day-to-day implementation of forest protection, conservation and utilization. For Ranchi, these VFCs are mostly voluntary committees of villages who adopt their age-old local rules of forest management. How VFCs work. Composition: 18 members, all of whom are villagers with the exception of the secretary, who is from the forest department. The VFC gets all produce free of cost except the final harvest, for which they pay a 20% royalty in cash or in kind. The surplus is sold in markets and net profits are allocated equally for forest development, village development and a private share for VFC members. But how participatory this approach was in reality is questionable. It is evident that although it is meant to be participatory, the VFC cannot really implement their role without government consent. The results of joint forest management. The implementation of JFM reduced deforestation in comparison to non-JFM forests. The VFCs enforce common rules for the selective harvesting of these products from JFM forests, in contrast to uncontrolled harvesting in non-JFM forests. But how much real social impact has the program had? How much did the rural community benefit? And how equally were these benefits distributed? To answer these questions, a social cost benefit analysis, or SCBA, was conducted. SCBA assesses the social benefits of a project against its social costs. It also obtains a quantifiable economic value for all costs and benefits, and produces a net present value, or NPV, based on a set discount rate. This informs analysts whether the project is beneficial for the society as a whole. SCBA is a type of planning balance sheet, or PBS, as it also identifies costs and benefits that are not quantifiable. The critical examination of the SCBA of Rachi's JFM project shows that it has significant limitations as an analytical tool in understanding the complexities of social and environmental impacts, as it tends to be more economic-based and quantitative. Here's a quick look at the methodology of the study. A household survey was conducted for a target group of 5 JFM sites and 3 non-JFM sites across 5 villages of Rachi. Households were selected by stratified random sampling in proportion to the total number of households falling into 5 groups: large farmers, medium farmers, small farmers, marginal farmers, and landless households. Different weights were attached to the distribution of costs and benefits to different income groups. Monitoring and evaluation. The monitoring and evaluation process aimed to examine the impact of JFM on the forest extraction patterns and observe the consistency of social justice in costs and benefits over time. There is no evidence of a formal monitoring mechanism of the project. The social cost benefit analysis that was conducted in 1996 was an ongoing evaluation exercise of the 40-year project. These are the costs identified in the social cost benefit analysis: direct costs as well as indirect costs. However, forest department establishment was the same for joint forest management and non-joint forest management, so only protection cost was considered. Opportunity costs were also not taken into account because they were difficult to measure. The benefits included tangible benefits and intangible benefits. The local ecological services were not taken into account because of the difficulties in measurement. Not much information is available on how the analysts valued and included intangible benefits, but they are difficult to quantify. The SCBA showed the following expected outcomes. There is a guaranteed flow of large-sized timber in the future. Assuming current rates of extraction continues, no surplus is available for non-JFM forests to counter thinning in years 10, 20 and 30. In contrast, JFM forests produce a thinning yield of 338 stems in year 10, 253 stems in year 20, 87 in year 30, and 61 as final yield. However, the SCBA also showed the following unexpected outcomes. Net present value of the project at current price and level of extraction is negative. The benefits become positive only for large farmer groups in the long run, but all other groups face a net loss. The present value of protection costs of JFM are borne disproportionately by the poor. Net benefits of JFM forests are lower than for the non-JFM forests. The loss from JFM are not offset by the expected sizable increase in quantity of timber. JFM forest regeneration does not increase non-wood product value. Based on these results, the following problems were identified with current JFM policies. The government assumed the local community as homogeneous. JFM overall favours the rural elite and large land farmers. Although the VFC comprises of local villages, it is not truly participatory, as the elite groups dominate decisions with regard to forest management. The income generated from the user fee offers little compensatory benefit to the poor. So what can be done differently? Firstly, bring changes to the institutional design of JFM systems. Increase the participation of the poor and marginalized in decision making. Increase the access to forests for the poor and marginal farmers. Balance the utilization of forest area. Further examine the long-term benefits of JFM for the rural poor. This being said, it is difficult to practically implement such changes due to social, cultural and political structures that take a long time to change. Nevertheless, Small to medium-term goals could be set along these recommendations so that they would contribute towards this long-term objective. What worked in social cost-benefit analysis? Quantifying the analysis gives the appearance of rational objectivity. It considered differential nature of returns to specified social groups, detailed knowledge of the study area, as well as a social discount rating of 2.93%, allowing a one-dimensional comparability of many different factors. What didn't work? Gender differences were not addressed. Outcomes would have been affected by the methodological issues in assigning weights and determining an appropriate social discount rate. The difficulties in quantifying the costs and benefits meant omission of other important valuations. Using non-JFM forests as a control group for comparison against JFM based on ecological similarities may be problematic. The quantification of social costs and benefits make the resulting analysis quite superficial. The assumption that current rates of extraction and household sharing of costs will not change during the 40-year period seems unrealistic. It was not considered that gains from JFM fluctuate over time. This analysis shows no incentive for the poorer social groups to put high premium on future incomes. Social cost-benefit analysis is inadequate in measuring the effectiveness of JFM's participatory approach. It is also not a sufficient tool to analyze environmental issues. Therefore, while social cost-benefit analysis is a useful tool in identifying costs and benefits of a project, it should be one of many tools that contribute to a pool of analyses, preferably a mix of qualitative and quantitative approaches. Alternative tools such as multi-criteria analysis and social environmental impact assessments are recommended.